I would imagine your DPS would go up by like 20, 30% if you just stood the fuck still. Stand the fuck. Stop moving around. Stop it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the workshop. By request. I know not a lot of people watch this because they're not that interested in getting good at World of Warcraft, which is a real shame because it's ultra satisfying when you do get good at it. And the workshop was something I did many years ago. Helped a lot of people. It helped a hell of a lot of people in the raiding scene. And it's those guys I kind of owe where I am to be honest with you. So I don't mind doing it if I find something definitely worth talking about. And today we have that. We have a long-standing member of the community. He's been watching me for years, has been following the advice and the tips and stuff, and it's so clear to me when we're about to watch this, is an elemental shaman doing Lady Ashvane Mythic, that we're about to see a very clear case of overthinking the encounter. And overthinking the encounter can be really negative to your actual performance. It's something that people get really stressed out about, and I can feel the stress coming from our player here while he's playing, of getting wound up, getting physically annoyed with himself. Frustration is setting in, and it's often a feeling that happens to many, many millions of players. And I genuinely mean that. When people talk about Mythic Plus, even if it's like +2, +4, things like that, it's because it's got a timer, they start to get that stress building on them. And then they see, and hopefully you would think that would actually relax them a bit, is you'll see a lot of players like myself do Mythic Plus, fail the timer, and not be arsed. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, it really, really isn't. It's not something we concern ourselves with. We're usually there to finish the dungeon. It's not a group that's pushing keys. That's a separate thing. But often, people even doing lower down content who maybe they're not prepared for it, stressed out, find themselves getting more and more upset about this idea of, because it comes across as a failure, right? It comes across as a failure, or in raiding, it comes across as a wipe, that kind of thing. So, what are we looking at here? Well, Lady Ashvane is actually a very simple encounter, but if we overthink it, we make it far more complicated than it actually is. And that's what we're going to see here. So, what is Lady Ashvane at its core? Let's break it down into its elements. It's a DPS race. We're playing an elemental shaman. Can we contribute much to anything other than damage? Not really. That's it. So we don't really need to worry about anything else. How do we do maximum DPS? The simple, basic rules from rule day number 1. Always be casting. It's really that simple. Always be casting. Always be doing something in order to generate damage. That's it. So we try and follow the rule of always be casting. And the key component of preventing us from doing that is movement. Really is that easy. If we have to run around, that's where your damage starts to suffer. It's often the reason people DPS, say, training dummies for ages and can do really good damage. And then you put them in an encounter and they just fall apart because now they're having to deal with other things. That's not what they practiced on, right? They practiced on a training dummy, which in many cases is kind of useless. It's good for seeing like procs and things like that. But in terms of actually being able to play, you're not playing against a training dummy. You're not dealing with anything. So when we get into this encounter, in fact, we're going to see a lot of problems start to occur. So we're going to get started on a few elements as we come down to the countdown here. Now, let's talk about the UI. I always do like to mention the UI in workshops. I think it's kind of important. The biggest obvious flaw that I have with this UI is this thing. Like, I did watch this with one of our Ellie Shamans. He's a top world ranked. Things I'd hate to say, but let's say top 10 for many, many times. Raider on a shaman, elemental shaman. And this thing, we both agree, is just practically useless. This is going to be the raid, like, notifiers of when things are happening. And it's kind of, one, it's way too big. I do like that it kind of gives you this information in the middle of your screen, but it takes up so much of your screen, as well as the range checker you've got in here, this other hardened carapace timer. There's like a huge, almost like a third of your screen, or let's say a quarter of your screen, that is dedicated to this information, of which you don't really need this much stuff. Like Barnacle Bash isn't something you need to be aware of at all. You can just get rid of that. This is stuff that you would go into bigwigs or whatever it is you're using and just turn that off. I don't need to know about it. Upsurge, you do need to know about. Rippling Wave, kind of, although you're not really going to deal with it here. You're going to notice it happening. Rippling Wave is when the bubbles are going to come out. So again, it's one of those things that you're just going to see happening. You don't need timer for it, really. Well, by the by, you guys pick and choose whatever you want to do. I just really don't like this. So what we're going to see here, which is, I'm sure it's going to upset some of our more seasoned casters here, is a huge amount of movement that is utterly unnecessary. The amount of spells lost here, the opener is fine for the most part, but the amount of movement that happens here is actually criminal. That's totally unnecessary. Here, like this movement, why? There's no need. Stand still. Stop moving. Stop moving. Stop moving. You're not casting anything. You see, this is going to continue on through everything. Just stand the fuck still. And the way you counter that, because you might be like, yeah, but the boss is moving stuff. After like 2 or 3 pulls, you're going to know where the tanks are pulling the boss. Now, your guild may run a strategy where they're deciding where to move the boss based on the coral. I'm not one to tell your guild to change its strategy, but I can tell you from somebody who's farming this boss is that it's totally unnecessary. Just go to the same wall every time. Really doesn't matter where the coral is. It's going to be in the whole room anyway. There's no difference to be made. In that case, you can pre-position yourself so you never have to move, right? But for the most part, you're just not going to have to move. So we're going to see this a lot. And what also goes along with this is, I think, from what I could tell, is this is a player who is desperately trying to be as helpful to his team as possible, and in doing so, having a massive negative impact. Similarly, lots of the raiders in this team are doing the same thing. So although it's so brave, and I love it when you guys send me these videos, and everyone likes to pick on the guy we're looking at, I can see this happening everywhere. Like, I really can see this happening everywhere. There's a lot of optimization needed to be done here. So you're going to see a lot of failed casts. Moving again, didn't need to. Moving again, didn't need to. Moving again, not really doing anything needs to happen. On an elemental shaman specific note, the Master of Elements buff isn't being used correctly. The Master of Elements buff, which you get from when he casts this lava burst, there you can see this buff has appeared. You want to utilize that with your earth shocks, definitely, but make use of that. It's like 20% damage on your earth shocks that's always missing because you're really not using it with your earth shocks. Now, that's an elemental shaman thing. And also, we're going to talk very much about Stormkeeper because this bugged the shit out of me and all that. And when my Ellie Shaman friend was watching this, I was like, why is he doing that with Stormkeeper? Like, we'll talk about it in a second. Now, upsurge is one of the reasons you're going to need to move, okay? Upsurge is one of the reasons you're going to need to move. But what we should also note is we're going to move out of this. We are going to get hit by some upsurges here, and then this is going to come down to a secondary thing. So we're stood still. They see this movement here? It's not necessary. Like, you were already in the barrier. If you're, again, you know your guy's casting the barrier, right? So you're I know what you're doing. You're like, I should be close for the barrier. Wait till the barrier's cast. Just wait until it happens. We'll always be casting. Always be casting. Always be casting. Just drill it into your head. Position, 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 position. I can't stress it enough. I really can't. It's 90% of raiding is position. It really is. You'd be amazed what happens when people do good positioning. It's incredible what happens. Watch out for the Orgazoa video coming up in the next day or so, where we'll talk heavily again about positioning. But wait till the barrier's cast. If you're outside it, sure, take a step forward. But you would have been fine. You would have already been in the barrier there. Anyway, you didn't need to move. It's as simple as that. So we're going to be continuing to DPS here and doing the same sort of things. So at this point, you can see this briny bubbles coming. Now let's talk about Stormkeeper. I think you're either worried about padding. All right, it's one of two things happening here. You're either worried about coming across as padding, or you're thinking, or maybe it's 3 things. You're thinking that if I use Stormkeeper single target, that would be better because it's going to damage the boss more, which is unlikely, actually. Or, no, that's the only 2 reasons I can really think of. You should be having Stormkeeper up for the briny bubbles, because I would expect you to be one of the guys that destroys the briny bubbles. Every time, pretty much. Like, every single time. And I don't think you use a single one on these, because you're going to get these free instant cast chain lightnings that are going to pass not only through the boss, but onto all of those briny bubbles, give you a massive amount of maelstrom to chunk into that boss. And you're going to be able to do it like, bzz, bzz, bzz. You're just going to be able to pop off and destroy them. And it really did get on my nerves that wasn't happening. Now, I know some Ellie Shamans might be like, yeah, but I disagree. The briny bubbles have to die. The quicker those DPS get out on the tank, get out of the briny bubbles, the more damage they do. There's really no reason in my mind to be not using Stormkeeper for the briny bubbles. And what we'll see is it's got like 14 seconds left right now. Managing that would lead to so much more personal damage for yourself. And those are the 2 biggest elements that would give you more damage, is better positioning and utilizing your class in an effective way. There's a rule that some people follow, which is use everything on cooldown so you get to use it more through the fight. And there are some fights where that is true. If you can fit in 4 major cooldowns instead of 3, Typically speaking, using 4 is better. But, and this is a big but, especially in BFA, especially in Legion and BFA, that has started to become less and less the case. And more realistically, the case is when are you using those DPS cooldowns? So you're going to see, especially once you progress past this boss, in fact, certainly when you hit bosses like Zakul and Ashara, you're going to find, in fact, the reality of the situation is that you have to sit on cooldowns for like 2 minutes plus sometimes, because they're just more important later in the fight. And less and less, and this is something I really tried to stress during the last Race to World First, is a damage meter, certainly at the Mythic level, is kind of one of the almost useless pieces of information you can get. It's really something that impresses less knowledgeable players, and that's the truth of it. That's all that matters. If you're in like some guilds where your guild leader cares about the damage meter while you're wiping, especially, or struggling with bosses, it's something we've really moved away from as more fights have become more complicated, which they have. I know some people are like, wow, it's dead easy. It's really not. It's really, really not. Trust me. It's really not. Once you get into these more complicated fights, your DPS cooldowns, working along with the other players, is actually more and more important to be using them at the correct time rather than trying to squeeze as many in as possible. There are certainly fights like the Queen's Court, for example, where you do want to do that, but Lady Ashvane isn't one of those fights. Lady Ashvane is about managing how much damage you do in certain phases, and in order to do that, some people have to sit on cooldowns. Like, you've sat on your Condensed Life Force now for quite some time. The shield's about to pop. I was a little concerned that you didn't use the Condensed Life Force with your other cooldowns, and in fact, you kind of delay it for a long time. When you come out, you kind of just sit on it for a while. So it is something that's not being utilized properly, at least in my view. But coming back to the Stormkeeper, you can line it up really nicely with the Briny bubbles and take maximum advantage, and I'm 99% sure, in fact, we're both certain, you would get a lot more boss damage out of doing that. And you're going to free up the DPS quicker, making them do more damage. So it's just an overall massive gain to the raid, let alone your own personal damage. So let's look here, because I did mention earlier on that this is a guy who is trying to be helpful. And in doing so, you see you're hard casting Chain Lightning now? Yeah, Stormkeeper is like 5 seconds away because you used it earlier. Yikers. Yikers in my mind as you do this. Again, a lot of unnecessary movements going on here. Now, I recently did a video on Lady Ashvane where I talked about certain principles that we follow, but it was kind of when raiding goes wrong. Now, I admire what you're trying to do here. Yeah, it's done at the wrong times. And in fact, this is, again, we're looking at one POV, but it's the whole guild that we need to consider here, is that you moved before the upsurge to get in position for the coral. Nope. Nope. Let's watch it again. So you're all gathered here. There's nothing happening right now. An upsurge is in literally 3 seconds. Yet you get this stampeding roar now to spread out, but you're all going to move into upsurge positions. This timing's just wrong. You stay here until upsurge is cast. Then you move. You put all the upsurges in one spot, then everyone spreads out. Now, you are going to spread out here because you're going to get ready to cut the coral. That is correct. It's just your timing is way, way off, because watch what happens. 2, 1, stampeding roars run out, and now you're all under upsurge, and you've all got to move again. That's damage loss for literally everybody in the raid, pretty much. It's like, it's no good. So you're going to have to move again here, right? That extra movement is just lost damage. We'll always be casting. We want to be stood still as much as humanly possible. That's what we're after doing. So this timing is just slightly off. It needs to be, that stampeding roar needs to be like 2 seconds later. You wait for the upsurge, then you move. And that way all the upsurges are in one place, and the whole raid is free to just move as little as possible, and then continue to nuke away. But again, I love what you're doing here. Okay, I love what you're doing here. You're getting ready to cut the coral. You're already in your mind thinking and hoping, I hope I get coral cutter on me. I'm already in position. And that means I could shout at the melee or whoever I'm paired with to say, I got this. Yeah? You're trying to be that helpful member of the raid. I appreciate that a great deal. So you're going to move it. Look at this. He's already primed to cut the coral should it be on him. Great. And now what's the rule with cutting coral? You want to cut the closest coral first, and then we're going to move over to here as range DPS slowly. Stutter stepping. Google on my channel. Go to YouTube. Mike Preach Wow. Type in stutter stepping. It's called stutter stepping. I'm pretty sure we kind of tagged that name, but I'm not going to claim it. Somebody will say they named it. But stutter stepping is something I've taught over and over again since I first started making videos in Cataclysm. And as a shaman, you should only be moving with Flame Shock, Earth Shock, and Lava Burst procs. That means that you can move without losing damage. Because every time we cast a spell, that global cooldown, which we're all very aware of, starts spinning. During that time, you can't do any damage for the most part. So, what do? We utilize that time to move a little bit, cast again, a little bit, and that's called stutter stepping. And you can cover huge gaps, literally without losing a single cast. It's very important to learn. What we don't want to do is just be running. So, Lava Burst proc. We can move. Stop moving. Stormkeeper. Briny Bubble. It's coming soon. Just wait. Just wait that little bit. Again, just hold your cart horses. Get into the soak like this. Getting ready to cast again. Getting knocked forward. Good. Now we're going to be... I would actually be knocked this way. Position, position, position. I don't want to have to run that way. That's going to cost me damage. I want to be knocked that way. If I'm going to be knocked anyway, I want to be knocked where I want to be knocked, right? That's what I want to happen. Now, what's weird here is, did you cut all the coral for the most part? So you moved to here because you're not cutting the coral, but you still didn't need to move. None of this movement needs to occur. Absolutely zero. Moving to here, there is one coral over there. So in fact, your positioning was fine because there's no coral to be cut over here, which means there's no soaks after this. So where do we want to be knocked here? This way. Over to here. We're moving back to the tank position soon, and we're going to have Briny Bubbles in like 6 seconds. I want to be as close to the boss as possible in case I get Briny Bubble. Right? That's what I want to do. So let's talk about Briny Bubble because this is going to become a problem. One thing I mentioned in my video about Lady Ashvane is you need to position yourself in such a way, position, 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 always thinking ahead. This fight is really slow. It's a really slow encounter. You have like so much time to think about it that you have to be in a position. So if there was coral over here, which there should be, by the way, this is a lot of soaks to do. It's a lot of lost damage. Try not to cut this many coral in one go. It's just not fun. I would like to be knocked over there, but I'd also want to make sure that should I get Briny Bubble, I can make it to the spot, right? And that's down to what my movement abilities are with my class. So as a druid, I can disengage quite a long distance, and I have dash in cat form. So I could cover quite a long distance very, very quickly. So if I get knocked over here, I could disengage to probably here and then make it to there within like the 4-second window that I have to get there. But I have to bear in mind that because if I don't get in the right spot, I'm going to fuck it up. A shaman just has less mobility choices than a druid, which means you can't be that far away. Okay. That's it. That's as simple as it needs to be. I just can't be that far away. So I'm going to move close. Briny Bubbles in 2 seconds. Okay, Briny Bubbles coming. It's on you. Now you like half finished your cast. Half thought about what you wanted to do. Then started jogging. No Ghost Wolf, which would have been my instant reaction because this is pretty far away. But you have still 4 seconds. But then you kind of ran into the upsurge. Again, strikes me as a bit of panic. Instead of like taking it easy, realizing you've got 3 seconds, you're trying to get to this spot, just circling around. Again, take it calm. So how do we keep it calm? Right? How do we keep it calm? There's a lot happening here for one player. One, I've got Briny Bubble. I'm a little farther away. And there's upsurges in my way. We know it's coming way back here. We know it's coming way back here. We know Briny Bubble's coming. We've got all the time in the world to think about our Briny Bubble.
Joined your channel.
Mike,
right?
Are you here?
Look at this. We've got all the time in the world to think about our Briny Bubble. I can start thinking about it now. Where do I need to be in 6 seconds? Maybe. What do we always assume? I'm going to get it. Always. Always. 100% of the time. If there's something that can affect a player that's about to cast, assume it's going to be you. All the time. And that way, you're never unprepared. So I've got 6 seconds. So what would I do here? I'm going to get knocked forward. Probably going to start taking a couple of steps forward just in case. Is it going to be on me? I'm going to Ghost Wolf. Didn't Ghost Wolf. Instead I finished the cast. I was kind of running over. Uh-oh. Knocked in the air. And it kind of ends like this because you're trying to get over there. And again, it comes down to just being relaxed. There's not a lot happening in this fight. Break it down to its component pieces. Always. Just break it down to its component pieces. And then we had all this movement. And again, I think you were kind of right what you did here. Well, unfortunately, it turned out to be incorrect, which is a bit of a bummer. Is the coral cut was coming, which is the second coral cut, which means in practice, you should want to be over here, actually, after the Briny Bubble to cut the further away corals. But you didn't notice that all the coral had gone, just as I didn't earlier on, because it's not supposed to be, but that's something you need to be aware of in your raid, just as I showed in my video, is like we noticed straight away it had happened. That was a discussion we were having at the time. Which now means, instead of coming back over here, because you kind of like backpedaled back over to this position, right? So you got Briny bubbled there, and then you got free, and your instant reaction was to go this way, right? Where is it? When you guys finally get you out, help me, help me. So you move back over to here. Instead, where you actually wanted to go was over here, because that's where the boss is going to be, right? The boss is actually going to be over here. So you're trying to do the right thing. It's just the wrong time, which is kind of the theme of this whole pull, actually. Right thing, wrong time. And you ended up so far away from where you actually wanted to be, while moving all the time. Like, this movement just is very upsetting, actually, because it's so unnecessary. You're moving so much for no real reason. And again, moving away instead of, look where the boss is heading now. Look how much distance now needs to be covered. It's time to jog. Time to get jogging, you know? So we're jogging over. We're trying to stutter step it a little bit, but we're now going to realize we've got, like, barnacle bashes coming, upsurges coming. We've got to try and cover this distance somehow, and we're moving a hell of a lot more again, which is really unfortunate. Now we're back in position. Now that's kind of unlucky. I mean, a part of me does want to kind of put the blame on the melee here a little bit, although as a ranged, I don't want to be running to melee. I want to be like here. Right, here's nice. The melee puts it underneath the boss on top of themselves. Now all the melee clock it, because they move out for the most part, except for a rep pally or a prop pally. I'm not sure what it is. But kind of sucks. It's not something you want, but this is where you want to be. Look where these casters are. They're totally fine. You're never going to miss an upsurge there. You don't want to be in melee. You want to edge over. So we're finally done with all this movement and how many lost casts it's are that have taken place. And moving again, there was no need to move. Briny bubbles are going to go past you. Again, right? You're panicking because you're seeing a circle of death underneath you. I get it. I do get it. But there's no upsurge underneath you, I don't think. Let me double check just to make sure. Yeah, you start moving there. There's no reason to. Stand still. These guys are going to run past you. They're going to sail on past you. And you end up actually running into an upsurge and then having to come back. Sorry about that. My phone was on. So again, no Stormkeeper was prepared for that, I believe. As we then continue to kind of repeat this cycle. So there's a lot I've pointed out there, yet it's all really minor. Most, like 90% of it, is movement. Yeah, movement. That's the only time you're moving back again, right? Look at this. Look at all this movement. This is so many lost casts. I would imagine your DPS would go up by like 20, 30% if you just stood the fuck still. Stand the fuck. Stop moving around. Stop it. Stop moving around, please. I beg of you. Stop moving all the time. You would have a huge DPS increase. There, you're popping Stormkeeper there. You get Briny Bubble is literally in 2 seconds. It's literally in 2 seconds, yet you're Stormkeepering there in order to put out some instant lightning bolts. And again, I think the mentality is I have this cooldown ready. I should use this cooldown. But you're using it at the wrong time and not using what your class is good at. Which is unfortunate. And it kind of like, there's a wipe coming, somebody's... no, this is not even a wipe yet. He's supposed to die. That was the tank that died. I think it was the prop paladin after soaking his bubbles. And again, moving into the barrier. It's all this unnecessary movement is just really just killing your damage. It really is just killing your damage. And it's a case of trying to do the right thing for all the wrong reasons. Instead of being relaxed. A lot of this is just relaxed. I feel your stress. I feel the stress that's happening here. Like all this running around. Trying to do the right thing. Trying to be the volunteer all the time. And then moving out again. Look at all the movement. And let's just go back. Let's go back to like here. Look how much you're just running. And there's no damage happening. You're just not doing DPS. It is a wipe that's happening now, but still. It's just not something you should be dealing with. Or doing all this running for the last like... Still moving. Still moving. All the time. Trying to get in the right position. I see what you're doing. But it's not helping out in any way. And that's really unfortunate. This Briny Bull positioning, okay, I see what you guys are trying to do, unless you were trying to go for a wipe. This is something more realistic, what you were trying to do here. Movement, positioning, always. Take it easy. There's so little that actually affects you here. Realistically, when you break it down, there's upsurges, which can appear below you, and there's Briny Bubbles. Other than that, all you need to do is, at some point, kind of drift over to the middle, and then drift back again. That's really it. And Briny Bubble doesn't even affect you that often. As a DPS, this fight is actually quite chill if you just relax into it and let it happen. And realize when things are going to happen so you're ready for them. Big advice, always assume what's going to happen is going to be you. Stand the fuck still, please. I beg of you. And also just brush up a little bit on what like Master of the Elements and stuff does, including like utilizing Stormkeeper properly for sure. Other than that, those improvements, I guarantee you put those into place, you're going to see a dramatic DPS increase like tomorrow. Really that easy. Just think about things when they happen to you. Right? Is Briny Bubble coming? Okay. Am I in a position where I can reach the boss? Yeah. Okay. Is it on me? No. Okay, I'll just stand still. Is somebody next to me with Briny Bubble? Maybe, but it doesn't matter. They're going to move to the Briny Bubble position. I don't need to move. I have to move for Upsurge and Coral. That's it. And I'm a Shaman, so I should move when I'm doing Flame Shocks, Lava Burst procs, Earth Shocks, Totem dropping, all these kind of things. And anything further than that, Ghost Wolf it. Nice and easy. So it really is as simple as that. Put those into place. I guarantee you'll see dramatic improvements. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please feel free to send in your workshops. You could probably best to tweet me, actually. At Preach Gaming. It's the easiest way. If you just put hashtag workshop, something like that. And I will find it rather than me sifting through emails and things like that. Thank you very much, guys. I will see you again. Bye-bye.